Welcome to this episode of the Canada History Society's series on British Columbia and Confederation, where we examine the amalgamation of the two colonies of British Columbia and the colony of Vancouver Island. The dismissal of Governor James Douglas in 1864 struck a resounding chord in the annals of British Columbia. Douglas, a figure of prominence in the fledgling region's early development, found himself besieged by concerns of conflicting interests stemming from his substantial landholdings. The allegations of corruption, like relentless waves, eroded the trust reposed in his leadership. In Arthur Kenedy's appointment as his successor, hopes were kindled only to be dashed upon the rocky shores of strained relations with the colonial legislature and tempestuous financial conflicts, culminating in his own dismissal in 1866. However, from the mists of uncertainty emerged Frederick Seymour, steering the ship of governance with a steady hand, weathering the storm, and ushering in a period of stability and measured progress. These shifts bore the hallmark of Britain's steadfast commitment to tackle the challenges of governance and lay the groundwork for British Columbia's momentous growth, paving the path towards eventual Confederation. The Cariboo Gold Rush was a significant event in the history of British Columbia, Canada during the mid-1860s. It was sparked by the discovery of gold in the Cariboo region, specifically in the area around the town of Barkerville. The rush attracted thousands of prospectors from all over the world, seeking their fortunes in gold mining. The gold discovery in the Cariboo region is often associated with the story of Billy Barker, a British miner. In 1861, Barker arrived at the area and staked a claim along Williams Creek. He and his crew persevered through difficult conditions, including the harsh winters, lack of supplies, and the challenging task of extracting gold from the creek. After several unsuccessful attempts, Barker's persistence paid off. In August 1862, his crew struck a rich deposit of gold, which turned out to be one of the most substantial discoveries in the region. The event brought attention to the Cariboo Gold Rush and sparked a frenzy of prospectors rushing to the area in hopes of similar success. Barkerville, named after Billy Barker, quickly developed into a bustling town and the commercial center of the Cariboo region. It became a hub for miners, merchants, and various service providers who sought to capitalize on the gold rush. The town quickly grew, boasting a population of several thousand at its peak. While Billy Barker's discovery was one of the notable success stories of the Cariboo Gold Rush, it is important to acknowledge that many prospectors did not strike it rich. Gold mining was arduous work, and only a small percentage of those who arrived in the region found significant amounts of gold. The Cariboo Gold Rush left a lasting legacy in British Columbia's history and played a crucial role in its development as a province. Concerns about Douglas reached the British government, and in 1864, the British Foreign Office decided to replace James Douglas as governor. In 1864, Governor Douglas was relieved of his position as the governor of the colony of British Columbia. The dismissal was also part of a larger administrative reorganization that aimed to address the challenges faced by the colony. They appointed Arthur Kenedy as his successor, who was tasked with implementing reforms and improving governance in the colony. Arthur Kenedy served as the governor of British Columbia from 1864 to 1866, preceding Frederick Seymour. Kenedy's tenure was marked by a more contentious relationship with colonial legislature. He faced criticism for his handling of financial matters and clashed with the elected officials in the colony. The tensions between Kenedy and the legislature reached a boiling point when the Colonial Assembly refused to pass the budget proposed by Kenedy, resulting in a deadlock. This conflict, along with ongoing concerns about Kenedy's leadership style and effectiveness, led to his eventual dismissal.
So, in British Columbia's history, the problems always derive on the frontier, always on the margins. And so it was when, in 1864, Arthur Kenedy arrives as colonial governor of Vancouver Island, and a chap by the name of Seymour, Frederick Seymour, arrives to become governor of the mainland colony of British Columbia. Douglas has left the scene in 1864. These two now inherit the two kingdoms. The two kingdoms are at war with one another. There's the island kingdom and there's the mainland kingdom. The island kingdom is the populous one. The mainland kingdom is the gold kingdom. 1864, when Seymour arrives, has just seen a massacre. It's called the Butte Inlet Massacre, and all the problems that have gone on in there, involving Vegby, of course, and involving Seymour, involving the trial and execution of 5 indigenous chiefs in the Chilcotin country.
In 1866, Frederick Seymour traveled to London to meet with officials at the British Colonial Office. During his visit, he advocated for the consolidation of the colonies of Vancouver Island and British Columbia under his governorship. At that time, Vancouver Island and British Columbia were separate colonies, each with its own governor. Seymour argued that combining the two colonies would lead to more efficient administration, improved governance, and better coordination of resources and policies. Seymour's efforts proved successful, and the British Colonial Office agreed with his proposal. As a result, in 1866, the colonies of Vancouver Island and British Columbia were united under a single governorship, with Frederick Seymour appointed as the governor of the newly merged colony. Seymour, recognizing the tide, traveled to London to give his view. He wanted the capital on the mainland, New Westminster, and assurances that the interests of his vast mountainous territory would not be subordinated to the smaller, more established Vancouver Island. But in Whitehall's echoing corridors, it was efficiency that mattered most. The Colonial Office wanted fewer ships, fewer salaries, fewer headaches, and so the fate of the two colonies would be determined not by their peoples, but by the decisions of men whose boots would never touch Pacific soil.
The union of the two colonies was made abundantly clear to the bureaucrats in London. Out on the colonies, however, in Victoria and in New Westminster, there were fights going on, and the fights were going on between the pro-union forces on the one hand and those who wanted to maintain their independence. And you can imagine those people who wanted to maintain their independence were the commercially minded and the bureaucratic legislative types in Victoria who'd already had this pre-existing colonial structure, which the mainland colony of British Columbia did not have.
On August 6, 1866, the two colonies were joined by imperial order. The name British Columbia was retained. Victoria became the capital. Seymour, despite protestations, was made governor of the whole. The Legislative Council was unified, though its membership tilted toward the island elite. The response was muted but resentful. In Barkerville and Yale, few celebrated. In Victoria, champagne was poured. What followed was a slow reshaping of identity. The economy stumbled as the gold fields dwindled. Debates flared over tariffs, land policy, and infrastructure. Roads were proposed, then abandoned. Frustration mounted, yet slowly the idea of union turned from necessity into possibility. Many on the mainland resented the decision. They had hoped their youthful energy and economic potential would dictate the new colony's direction. Instead, it seemed power had shifted back across the strait. It was a consolidation of empire, not a union of equals. As historian Gene Barman wrote, the mainland was annexed in all but name. In the boardrooms and drawing rooms of Victoria, the colony's direction was decided, even as the gold rush trails of Yale and Barkerville slowly emptied. Frederick Seymour, during his tenure as governor of British Columbia, was known to be a vocal opponent of joining Confederation with Canada. He held reservations about terms being offered to British Columbia and had concerns about the potential loss of local control and the impact on the colony's economy. Frederick Seymour's governorship was cut short when he passed away on June 10, 1869, while still in office. His opposition to Confederation remained consistent until his death. We will later talk more about Seymour. Join us next time for Part 5 of the Canadian History Society's 20-part series as we explore local politics, who we were.